For the record, what's your name?
Do you want my real name? Okay, so my name is Alex Michaels, and my stage name is Alexis Michele.
How long have you been doing drag?
My first gigs in drag came when I was like out of high school and going into college maybe, so about 13 years ago I had my first paid gigs, and I've been doing drag sporadically since then, but I've been doing it full-time for the past 2 years.
What style of drag do you think you fit into?
I am interesting in that I cross a couple of different genres or styles of drag. I definitely can fit into a kind of fishy and pageant aesthetic, but I also come from a theater background, so being really campy and theatrical and comedic is also a part of what I do. So I can't say that I fit into one box easily.
So you're still performing?
Yes, I still perform.
When is your next gig?
I have a weekly show on Wednesdays at Boots and Saddle from 8 to 10. So everybody in the class, come.
We are coming. How do you feel about the representation of drag now? Today, rather.
Well, really, I mean, it's impossible to talk about how drag is represented without talking about RuPaul's Drag Race. Drag Race really changed the climate for drag in that because it's a show, a competition show that is based really on aesthetics, while performers have their moments to shine on the show, and many of the people who have come through RuPaul's Drag Race are strong performers. In fact, most of them who are strong performers don't get to showcase what they do on the show. But because the show is so much about creating a look, I think that there's a lot of emphasis placed on your look, the best look you can come up with, and there's not as much thought about personality, performance, what kind of character you have when you're in drag. So I think that that's been the biggest change in drag these days, is that it's so much about how you look.
Do you watch RuPaul's Drag Race?
I do. I'm a big fan of the show, and I have applied to be on RuPaul's Drag Race 7 times!
That was my next question.
7 times!
Do you feel there's a big shift in drag from when it started, like Paris is Burning, to now?
Well, I think, you know, drag has evolved a lot, and you certainly, like, even in Paris is Burning, you get the perspective of some of the more seasoned queens who, you hear that one queen talking about how everyone wanted to be like a showgirl, and then as time went on, through the 80s and into the 90s, that it really became much more about looking as female as possible. And I think that everything has, just like in fashion, everything has an up and a down and an ebb and a flow. And I think at the heart of drag, because it is men dressing as women,
right?
And I put it in quotation marks because most drag queens don't feel that their objective is to look like a woman. Some do. That's the most important thing to some queens.
Right.
So I think that concept, that idea of a man trying to look like a woman will always be there in drag. I think it's always going to be present. But, I think that right now we're in a moment where androgyny is really being embraced. Not only will you see, like, a beautifully painted face with no wig, but you'll even see like gorgeously painted eyes now, and everyone's rocking a glitter beard.
Yeah.
So I do think that we're having a moment in drag right now where like the gender fuck and the androgyny is having a moment. But you've always got the pageant systems going, and so those queens who are all about pageant polish, they're always going to be around. And it just sort of depends what comes into fashion and what goes out and so on.
Do you openly accept like other forms of drag, especially now? Like you were talking about the guys with the beards
glitter
and the
beards.
more androgynous look.
I am into all kinds of drag. For me, drag is about expression. And so if you want to express yourself by putting glitter in your beard, if you want to express yourself by patting your hips, if you want to express yourself by wearing lip gloss and, you know, mascara, whatever does it for you, because bottom line, drag is a labor of love, and it's really hard, and it's very expensive. And if you don't love doing it, like, you have no business doing it.
Where do you think drag is going in the future?
It's really interesting to see where drag is right now because of the movement toward the mainstream. I won't say that I think drag has become mainstream, but it's moving in that direction. I mean, for example, so Bianca Del Rio, who won season 6 of Drag Race,
Love her.
is one of the smartest people on television. And I personally felt that when the world lost Joan Rivers, which was very sad, that there was literally no one more qualified to take over her Fashion Police hosting on E! Now granted, we're not quite there. It didn't happen.
Right.
But I think we could get to a point where I wouldn't be surprised if we see Bianca Del Rio as a host, or you know, or doing some kind of special on more mainstream networks. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more and more drag on TV. Definitely think it will continue to be more in the public eye and moving more toward mainstream, even if it never really becomes mainstream, because also at its heart, it's meant to be a little bit niche and a little bit subversive and a little bit to the side, which I think makes it interesting. I think if it were to be fully embraced and fully accepted and just everywhere, I think you'd start to see like a corporate version of drag, like a dumbed down, more digestible version of drag, and that would be like the worst thing for the future of drag. It should always be a little bit fringy.
My last question, being that we see it depicted in movies like Tu Wong Fu, you know, how do you feel about the way it's looked at in movies and, you know, on these comedies when someone does a skit, or they're not making fun, but I guess, you know, poking at what drag is? Do you feel that that's just a joke? Do you think that it's something that we just kind of have embedded, that this is what drag is?
It's interesting because drag is so wide, the definition, and because the spectrum of what it can be is so wide. I find it less easy to be offended by how it's depicted. Okay, here's this. So for example, you brought up Tu Wong Fu as an example. There you had 3 heterosexual male actors to varying degrees of fame. You know, Patrick Swayze was a megastar, Wesley Snipes was a megastar. I think John Leguizamo was a little bit more of an up-and-comer at the time that they made Tu Wong Fu. But I thought that was a prime example of actually it being done in a very respectful way. I found them to be very authentic. I mean, maybe Wesley Snipes was not the most authentic, but I found Patrick Swayze's portrayal and the dignity he brought to his character to be very respectful. And John Leguizamo in Tu Wong Fu, I mean, he inhabited his character and the fact that his character was a drag queen so completely. So I thought that's actually an example where I think it's done quite respectfully. Or an example of where I question how drag is being treated was the musical Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Not the movie, but the stage version. When they are casting that show, they are really not looking for real drag queens. They are looking for strong male dancers who they can slap makeup and outlandish costume on. In fact, it's not even the way the makeup is designed in that show, I would say, does not necessarily honor the tradition of drags. And I mean, there are technical requirements that show had in that the guys need to get in and out of drag quickly. So there was makeup applied by use of not an applique, but almost a sticker. And that is just like so opposite from the tradition of drag and what we've learned about, you know, how we do our makeup over the years. So for me, you know, that's maybe not my favorite treatment of drag in entertainment, because to me, it's sending a message that in this show that's about drag queens, that drag queens don't have a place in it, you know, to be cast, and also that the traditions that we hold near and dear, you know, like the hour or sometimes several hours it takes to put on your makeup, can be skipped by going. So I would say maybe I had mixed feelings about that. But most of the time, I feel I'm okay with how drag is represented in media and entertainment because there's such a wide range. Now, here's something that I don't know how I'm going to feel about, but I am very interested to see how this is handled. So, Fox is going to be producing Rocky Horror Picture Show starring Laverne Cox as Frankenfurter. And that is really kind of like a, whoa, what's going on? Because Laverne Cox is a woman.
Right.
Who is going to be playing... Treat this.
Right.
Are they going to treat... Is this going to be a re-envisioned Rocky Horror where Dr. Frank is a trans woman? Or is it going to... Or is Laverne Cox going to be playing a transvestite, you know, who is male?
Right, which is not him either, or her. Rather,
so
either.
That's really, I have a big old fat question mark about how they're going to handle this. Because Laverne Cox is an actress. Actresses like to be called actor, so that was not a gender pronoun slip. I was being respectful to her and her craft. Because Laverne Cox is an actor, I think I would be very impressed if she played it as though she were a transvestite man. But I don't know how they're going to handle it. So that'll be really interesting to see.
Because of my own curiosity, who is Alexis? Michele?
So for me, it's interesting. Many people will say that their drag persona or character is very different from who they are when they're out of drag. For me, Alexis Michele is an extension of Alex. She's my female half. She's not a separate person, not a separate character. When I'm in drag, I feel very much in my own skin. I feel very natural. I feel uncomfortable because I'm tucked and 4 pairs of tights and corset and the work. So it's uncomfortable, but it feels very natural personality-wise.